I'm Ethan, and I haven't been the same since that night on Route 46. It started like any other road trip, windows down, playlists on repeat, an endless desert stretching ahead. But the moment I pulled into that gas station alone in the middle of nowhere, something shifted. My car vanished. The sky darkened in ways I can't explain. And what I found inside that diner, it wasn't meant to be seen by anyone still alive. I was driving from Colorado to California, an impulsive road trip. I planned after quitting my job and packing a bag with barely a plan. I just needed to be somewhere else, somewhere far. For the first 2 days, the road gave me exactly what I wanted: silence. Long, straight highways cutting through plains and hills, the occasional gas station, a few distant mountains on the horizon. I played the same old playlist on repeat, rolled down the window, and let the wind drown out my thoughts. By the third day, I was deep in the Nevada desert. The sun had started to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in burnt orange and violet. The temperature dropped fast, the shadows stretched longer, and I realized I hadn't seen another vehicle in over an hour. The gas tank was low, dangerously low, and my phone had lost service miles ago. I started to worry, scanning the empty landscape for any signs of life, any place I could refuel or rest for the night. Just as the sky turned that deep, unsettling blue that comes right before full darkness, I spotted a dim light in the distance. A neon sign buzzed faintly through the thickening dusk. It was a gas station, sitting isolated on the side of Route 46. I hadn't planned to come this way, but the GPS had rerouted me hours earlier when I lost a main road to construction. This was off the usual track, not even on the map I kept in my glove box. The place looked old, not charming old, but forgotten old, the kind of place that hadn't seen updates since the 70s. A single gas pump stood out front. The numbers on the display faded and crooked. The lights inside the small attached convenience store glowed yellow, flickering occasionally like they couldn't make up their minds about staying on. I pulled in slowly and killed the engine. The sound of the tires crunching gravel echoed louder than it should have. I sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, not sure why I felt a tightness in my chest. I was used to traveling alone, used to strange places, but something about this one made me hesitate. Eventually I stepped out. The air smelled dry, metallic, like dust and old rust. The pump looked functional, but there was no card reader. I'd have to go inside. I glanced around again. No other cars, no other buildings, no signs of recent activity. Just open land and that buzzing neon sign flickering like a dying firefly. The bell above the store door jingled as I stepped in. The interior was dim, lit by a few overhead fluorescents that buzzed and blinked. The shelves were mostly empty, with just a few dusty cans of soup, some stale chips, and odd knickknacks that looked like they belonged in a yard sale. A fan sat in the corner, spinning slowly, not plugged in. There was no one behind the counter. No sign of a cashier. I stood there for a second, waiting. Maybe they were in the back. I called out a quiet hello, then a louder one. Nothing. I walked to the counter and rang the little silver bell. The sound seemed too sharp in the quiet. It echoed against the empty shelves and peeling wallpaper. Then I heard something from behind the door that led into the storage area. It wasn't footsteps, not really. More like a soft dragging noise, slow, unsteady, not mechanical, not rhythmic. It sounded wrong, like something being pulled across a hard floor. The hair on my neck stood up. I backed away from the counter slowly, my eyes fixed on that door. It was slightly ajar, just enough that I could see a sliver of darkness inside. The sound stopped. Silence returned, deeper this time, as if the building itself had paused to listen. I turned to leave, deciding I'd rather run out of gas than stay there another minute. I stepped outside, the gravel crunching under my boots, and glanced toward where I had parked. But my car wasn't there. I froze. For a second I thought I was disoriented. Maybe I'd parked on the other side. I walked around the building, scanning every inch of the lot. Nothing. There were no tire tracks, no oil stains, not even the faint heat of a recently running engine. My car was gone, like it had never been there. At first, I genuinely thought I had made some kind of mistake. Maybe I had parked a little further from the gas station than I remembered. Maybe the exhaustion was playing tricks on me. I walked around the lot slowly, scanning the cracked pavement for any sign of tire marks, oil drips, anything that could tell me where my car had gone, but there was nothing. The entire parking area was empty, like it hadn't been used in years. I stood there for several seconds, confused, disoriented, heart starting to beat a little faster. I knew exactly where I had parked. I was tired, yes, but not out of it. I replayed it in my head, pulling in, shutting off the engine, grabbing my phone and wallet, hearing the crunch of gravel underfoot as I stepped out. It all happened, and yet the car was gone. I reached for my phone instinctively, only to be hit with the second problem. No service, not even a single bar. The screen flashed no signal in that mocking way it does when you need it most. I held it up toward the sky, tried restarting it, even walked in a small circle hoping for some kind of signal to return, but nothing worked. I felt the first flicker of real panic rise in my chest. I was completely alone, stranded in a place that didn't make sense. The gas station behind me felt wrong now. The longer I stood there, the more I noticed things that hadn't registered at first. The lights, for example, they were too bright, flickering slightly but never fully dimming, like they were stuck in a permanent loop of almost failing. The buzzing from the neon sign had grown louder too, or maybe I was just more aware of it now. It sounded like insects trapped in the walls. I turned back to the convenience store. Maybe the cashier could help. Maybe there were cameras that had picked up what happened, or a landline phone I could use. But when I looked through the glass doors, something inside me sank. The interior had changed. When I first stepped in, it had looked like a typical rundown store, cluttered, dusty, but functional. Now it was different. The lights were off, the shelves empty. No snacks, no drinks, no small signs of life. Just rows of bare metal racks and darkness creeping in from the corners. I hesitated before stepping closer, unsure if I really wanted to go back in, but I didn't know what else to do. As I reached for the handle, a sound stopped me. The bell, the same little silver bell I had rung when I first entered, it chimed again. Loud and clear, like someone else had just walked in or out. But I was standing right in front of the door, and it hadn't moved. The bell kept swinging, metal softly tapping the glass, even though there was no breeze, no movement. I backed up a step, and that's when I noticed that there was something in the back corner of the store. Something I hadn't seen before. It wasn't moving, not really visible. Just there, like a dark shape tucked behind the shelves, perfectly still. I couldn't make out what it was, but the moment my eyes landed on it, a deep, instinctive dread gripped me. I knew I wasn't supposed to see it. I knew it wasn't supposed to be there. I blinked and it was gone. But the feeling didn't leave. The silence around me thickened. Even the insects in the distance seemed to stop. I turned away from the door, not even trying to make sense of it anymore. I just wanted to be away from this place. I started walking toward the road. There wasn't too much light left. The dim hue of the gas station behind me and the vast stretch of dark highway ahead. My plan was simple. Walk until I had signal, or until a car passed by. It was a bad plan, but better than standing still. That's when I realized something else. The road didn't look right either. It was darker than it should have been. Not just from the setting sun, it looked like the darkness itself had thickened. The stars weren't coming out. The horizon was a void. It felt unnatural. And then I heard the dragging sound again. From behind the building, not rushed, not panicked, just slow, deliberate, like something patient was making its way around the corner. I didn't look back. Whatever was behind that building, I didn't want to see it. I couldn't explain why, but my body knew something my mind couldn't grasp. That slow, heavy dragging sound was wrong, too heavy to be a person, too deliberate to be an animal. It was the sound of something that had no reason to hurry, like it already knew I wasn't going anywhere. I kept walking, feet crunching on gravel, heart hammering harder with each step. My eyes stayed fixed on the road ahead, even though I couldn't see very far. The sky had dimmed to a strange shade of black, not the usual deep navy of night, but something denser, like a thick curtain had been pulled over the world. There were no stars, no moon, just an emptiness above me that felt closer than it should. The further I walked, the more disconnected everything felt. The air didn't shift. No wind, no insects, no natural sounds at all. Just the fading buzz of the gas station behind me, and the occasional crack of gravel under my shoes. After about 20 minutes, I saw headlights to pinpricks of light growing brighter as they approached. Relief surged through me like a sudden gust of wind in my lungs. I stepped into the road, waving both arms, trying to signal the driver. The vehicle slowed, a rusted pickup truck with a crooked front grille and faded green paint. It rolled toward me at a steady pace, not fast, not hesitant, just calm. To calm. As the truck drew closer, I moved to the driver's side, already preparing to explain what had happened. But when the driver's face came into view, everything stopped. He was staring straight ahead, eyes wide open, mouth slightly agape. His skin looked waxy under the dashboard lights. At first I thought maybe he was asleep, or dazed. But as the truck passed me in slow motion, I realized what I was looking at. He was dead. There was no mistaking it. His head was stiff, unmoving. His pupils were glassy. There was no tension in his muscles. He sat there like a mannequin behind the wheel, arms limp, body unnaturally still. The truck just kept rolling forward, like something unseen was pushing it from behind. I stood frozen in the middle of the road, watching the taillights fade into the darkness. I waited for the sound of it stopping, or the slam of brakes, or a crash, but there was nothing. It just rolled on into the black, until even the lights were swallowed. I felt something then, not a sound, not a breeze, just a weight, like the space behind me had shifted. I turned slowly. Nothing, just the empty road stretching behind me, and the faint glow of the gas station far in the distance. But I knew something had moved. Something had changed. The air around me felt charged, like it was listening, watching. Then I heard footsteps. Not dragging this time, crunching, purposeful, steady, the sound of boots on gravel. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the area. There was no one, no silhouette, no sign of motion, but the footsteps didn't stop. They echoed softly, always a few paces behind me, no matter how I turned. Every time I looked, they'd pause. Every time I faced forward again, they'd start. I started walking again, faster this time. My heart was pounding, my breathing was shallow. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe there was an animal nearby. Maybe I was just hearing the echo of my own steps. But deep down, I didn't believe that. I walked for another mile, maybe more, before spotting something new. A structure up ahead, a diner, by the look of it. A squat single-story building with a metal roof and a dark sign. It sat alone in the desert like it had been dropped there decades ago and forgotten. There were no cars out front, no lights in the windows, but the front door was slightly ajar, tilted just enough to be inviting. It felt wrong. Everything told me not to go inside, but I was out of options. I stepped up to the door and gently pushed it open. The hinges creaked softly as the entrance gave way. Inside, the air was stale and thick with dust. The place looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Every table was set, forks and knives perfectly placed, cups upside down on saucers, menus neatly tucked under salt shakers. The kind of unnatural order that only exists in places that haven't seen people in a very long time. Behind the counter, I spotted a landline phone mounted on the wall. I moved quickly toward it and picked up the receiver. No dial tone, just silence. And then something caught my eye on the wall nearby, a photo. Taped there, slightly yellowed at the edges. It was the gas station, same flickering sign, same cracked pavement. And in the photo, my car parked exactly where I had left it. I stared at the photo, unable to look away. My car was there, no question about it. Same dent on the rear bumper, same hanging air freshener on the mirror. But it wasn't just the car that disturbed me. It was the quality of the picture. It looked old, faded, like it had been sitting there for years. The corners were curled, the colors slightly washed out. Whoever had taken it hadn't done so recently, and yet it showed something that had only happened less than an hour ago. My thoughts scrambled for answers. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe someone else had a car that looked like mine. But that didn't explain the angle of the photo. It was taken from the same spot I had stood when I first got out, the exact same perspective. I backed away from the photo and glanced around the diner. Nothing had changed, but the silence inside felt heavier now, like the walls were holding their breath. I turned to the door to leave, to get out of this strange building, but it wasn't there anymore. Where I had walked in, where I knew there had been a door just minutes earlier, there was now only wall. Seamless, no hinges, no handle, just dull metallic paneling, identical to the rest of the interior. I touched it, cold and solid. No give, no secret mechanism. I knocked, and the sound barely echoed. The room swallowed the noise like it didn't want anyone outside to hear. My pulse quickened. I turned to the windows. They were still there, but wrong. When I looked out, I didn't see the road or the desert. I saw reflections, just my own face staring back at me. The inside of the diner mirrored back infinitely. The glass had turned into something else, like screens pretending to be windows, but with no connection to the outside. I moved from one to another, pressing my face against the glass, trying to catch a glimpse of anything real, but there was nothing beyond the reflections. I could see myself from every angle, slightly distorted, like the diner was watching me through 100 lenses. Then the jukebox turned on. It sat in the corner, half covered in dust, its chrome edges dulled with time. It hadn't made a sound until now. No music played, but the lights inside flickered to life. A slow, circular pattern of red and green. The kind of warm nostalgia you'd expect to find in a 1950s diner, except here, it felt sinister. Like it had been waiting for a cue, and then came the hum. Low at first, barely noticeable, like the vibration of a refrigerator. But it grew louder, rising in pitch until it became a dull throb in my skull. Not painful, just deeply unsettling. Like the kind of noise that doesn't come from sound, but from something deeper, something behind the world. I pressed my palms to my ears, but it made no difference. The hum was inside me now, vibrating through my chest, my teeth, the back of my eyes. I staggered away from the jukebox, bumping into a booth. The plates on the table rattled slightly but didn't fall. Everything in this place was perfectly still. Despite the growing sense of movement, I felt like the building was shifting around me, changing shape while pretending it wasn't. I looked back at the wall where the photo had been. There were more now, at least a dozen, lined up in rows, each one showing the gas station. Each one showing a different vehicle parked in the same spot where I had left mine. Trucks, sedans, motorcycles. Some were modern, others clearly decades old. Some had people standing beside them, men, women, children, always facing the same direction, always frozen mid-step, as if caught just as they were realizing something was wrong. My knees felt weak. I stumbled toward the counter again, hoping there was anything I had missed. A key, a back exit, a trapdoor, but everything was sealed. The kitchen doors were fake. The cabinets didn't open. Even the register was bolted shut. I was trapped. Not just in the diner, but in something else entirely. A loop, maybe, or a memory. Something old and rotting that had pulled me in the moment I left the highway. Behind me, the jukebox lights flashed faster. I turned around slowly, My breath caught in my throat. And then I saw it. In the reflection of the window, standing at the far end of the room, near the photo wall, a figure. Tall, thin, motionless, no face, no details, just a shape. It hadn't been there before, and it was watching me. I didn't move. My legs felt locked in place, like the very air around me had thickened, refusing to let me run. The figure in the reflection didn't shift. It just stood there, tall and motionless, like it had always been a part of the diner, just out of view, just out of reach, waiting for me to notice it. But when I turned around to face it directly, there was nothing there. The end of the room was empty. The photo wall, the booths, the counter, everything exactly where it should be. I stared for a long time, too afraid to blink. Then I looked back at the window. The figure was gone from the reflection, but I wasn't relieved. It didn't feel like it had disappeared. It felt like it had moved. The jukebox lights stopped suddenly, all at once. No fading, no flicker, just gone. Silence returned, and for a moment, I could hear my own heartbeat again. It thudded in my chest like a ticking clock, each beat dragging me deeper into something I couldn't name. I backed away from the window, staying close to the center of the room. I didn't want to be near the walls anymore. I didn't want to catch another glimpse of something I couldn't unsee. I just wanted to understand what was happening. I wanted to believe there was a way out. Then the lights inside the diner flickered once, just a single flash. When they came back on, there was another photograph on the wall. I hadn't seen anyone put it there. I had never looked away long enough, but it was there now, perfectly aligned with the others. I walked toward it slowly, every part of me telling me not to look, but I did. It was a photo of me, standing outside the gas station. Same clothes, same backpack, same tired expression on my face. Except there was something else, something behind me in the picture. A blur, a tall, indistinct shape, right at the edge of the frame, almost like the lens had caught it by accident. I stared at the image, skin crawling. Then I heard footsteps. This time they were faster, urgent, not mine, not echoing, coming directly from behind the counter. I turned, expecting to see something, anything, but the diner was still empty. And then came the sound of static. It wasn't coming from the jukebox anymore. It was coming from the ceiling. I looked up. There was a small speaker above the counter, like the kind used for soft music or intercom announcements. The static grew louder, sharp and distorted, like it was trying to form words but couldn't quite push through. Then I heard it, a whisper buried inside the noise. It said my name, not once, over and over. A soft, broken version of it, like a memory trying to speak. I backed away from the counter and slammed into one of the booths. My knees hit the edge and I collapsed into the seat, gasping. The whispering stopped. And the diner shifted again, not physically, but in feeling. Something changed. The reflections in the windows darkened. The air grew colder. The tables previously so pristine were now covered in dust and cobwebs. Plates cracked, cups shattered. It was like time had caught up to the illusion. The door was back. It stood at the far end, half open again, just like before. My first instinct was to run toward it, but something inside me hesitated. Was it really the way out? I forced myself to stand, my legs trembling beneath me. I walked toward the door slowly, carefully, afraid that it would vanish again, but it stayed. When I reached it, I stepped through without looking back. I was outside again. The air was cold, the sky still starless, the world still wrong, but I was out of the diner. I turned to look behind me and froze. There was no diner, just an empty stretch of road. Sand, wind, nothing else, like the building had never existed. I stood there for what felt like forever, trying to understand, trying to breathe. Then behind me I heard the low rumble of an engine. A car was approaching, headlights cut through the darkness. I stepped forward, waving both arms, trying to signal the driver. The car slowed. It was mine. Same dents, same license plate, same air freshener swaying from the mirror. But I wasn't driving it. There was someone else in the driver's seat, someone who looked exactly like me. Same face, same clothes. They didn't look at me as they passed. They just stared straight ahead and kept driving.